Hi, welcome back. This is Bill Quinn. I am delighted to welcome Sheila Holm this afternoon, and we are going to continue on through her latest work, An Eternal Plan. Sheila, thank you so much for being with us.
There is so much. There is so much happening now, and there's so much aligned with exactly what they were doing. It's I can understand the urgency now of Father to get all this information and set everything else aside. Just get this information out to the people. It's amazing.
It is, isn't it? And so much of what we've spoken about in our last segments is, in fact, we see it playing out in the world around us now in many ways. And so it's, as you say, it's very timely, very, in some ways, quite urgent for people to pay attention and learn. So with that, tell us what we're going to cover today, please.
Well, we already did FBI, and we got the 60 pages done of that, point 35. And now I put a bunch of points together to show how quickly they took us down the slippery slope. And so again, it's written backwards. So the points today are from chapter 19, going from points 34. And if we can get to 23, we can probably get to 23. I just don't know if we'll make it that far.
That's great. All right. So, let me, before I bring that up. So generally this speaks to the control of certain areas of society. Is that right? In areas of societal organization?
All of these points are about their structure and how they structured it to work for them.
Okay. All right.
And starting with point 34 is starts on page 391. And it is the Committee on Un-American Activities, eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. So you know what they did with it? They renamed it. Take a guess. What do you think? Of course, I already told you. But take a wild guess. What would it have to do? Because Un-American Activities, they changed it to Judicial Committee.
Oh,
so
goodness.
Would you ever know that the Judicial Committee was summarizing all of their un-American activities that they've been up to?
Well, if we watch what's happened with many of the Trump cases, we might, but not naturally, no. So isn't that interesting?
So it's just kind of crazy. I don't go heavy into these points, which is why I put all of these points into one chapter. And again, it was Father that said, break it here, break it here, break it here. And so we're going to get pretty quickly through these because I didn't get real heavy about any of them. Just let you know, this is what they're doing. And if you look at, I think I gave an example in this point, because did you ever see Legends of the Fall? I think Brad Pitt was there, Anthony Hopkins.
I did see it. I don't recall much of it, but yes, I did see it.
It's the three brothers. It's about going into World War I with the gas masks and everything over in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And the youngest brother went, and then Brad Pitt was like, he's in trouble. So he went to try and get him out, but he was killed. And all the stuff that was happening, all of that relates to what they were doing here. And Legends of the Fall lets you know, even though they had a few cars, lets you know exactly where life was, where people were just trying to deal. So they weren't really getting around like we are now. They weren't really communicating with each other like we are now. But that family depicted exactly what happens when you're going into a constant war mode. And when it started in World War I, as we can look back now, we've done nothing but be in war since that war.
That's right. War after war with very little break in between.
So what you do, you send all your soldiers everywhere. You put them on bases all over the world. And you put them out there for 10, 20, 30 years before they retire. And even General Flynn has mentioned this. He came back home. And how do you recognize back home? Because while they were protecting everybody else's borders, protecting everybody else's rights, protecting all of these people and all these different civil wars, most of them all over the world, we were vulnerable at home because our guys were what? Out there. They weren't here. And so the realization of where this has taken us is amazing, just absolutely amazing. And when they transferred this, it was in 1975. That's when they transferred it to the House Judiciary Committee. And so And what have they done for us in our judiciary? So you're getting an idea as to how they just change things. They know what to do. They've come in and done it very well. We thought they were working hard for us, and they've never been aligned with us. That's what all of this is proving in all of these points. They had an agenda. They've come forward with the agenda, and we just didn't understand what it was.
Yep.
So point 34 kind of leads you into this. It's just remarkable how Father works and having me do all this backwards, because the research was tough, but when you do understand the depth of this, it's easier to comprehend because they did everything backwards to us. It's easier to comprehend. That's how we got here, but we didn't see how they were taking us here. So that's what these points absolutely cover, is how they were taking us here, and we didn't even know. It's like point 33 is eliminate laws against communism.
Mm-hmm.
Would we even know what the laws are against communism? And we're to eliminate all laws or procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. That's point 33. We're only 2 before the FBI, right? So, I mean, I'm trying to keep putting this in perspective, because it's a lot to take in, to realize how much they really didn't like us the whole time that they've been with us.
Well, they'd love us to be gone, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's a really special summary, and it's on page 396. And the very top is how to operate a socialist state. I think you're going to find this interesting.
This one. There we go.
Okay. So number 1, healthcare. You got to control it. Got to control all the hospitals, got to control all the doctors, got to actually educate the doctors. Did you know that John D. Rockefeller also took over the medical education process?
That's right.
So everything that doctors do with us now is all part of the agenda, and we didn't know they had an agenda. But that's why they keep putting us, our people in America are put on so many medications, so many different kinds of vaccines. It isn't happening anywhere like this anywhere in the world. When they tried their experiments in South Africa, they got rid of them right away because all their children were disabled and sick and having all these deformed. It's awful when you see what they did to the generations, and they stopped it. They said, we're not going to allow this to continue. And it's continued in America. We have huge children's hospitals with cancer. Father didn't send them to the world with cancer. Children that young, you go back and why do none of the children in other cultures have big hospitals with children full of cancer? And nobody questions any of this. So anyway, and then you can just see, then the gun control, then the welfare, then the education, then the religion, and then class warfare. They've taken us through all of these steps. Every single one of them have been overwhelming upon us across America, sea to shining sea.
And of course, if we listen to RFK Jr. over the last couple of years, he's helped people begin to understand just how bad it is, especially in the U.S., for things like chronic disease. Everybody seems to be on one medication or another for everything under the sun, all kinds of chronic diseases that didn't exist or didn't exist nearly in the levels that they do today. If you go back even a scant, 20 or 30 years, they've all increased. It's dastardly.
They're giving us new medications to choose from all the time. They're all pharmacia. They're all potions. Variations of this and that, and look at the side effects.
Yep.
I mean, my aunt had so many things happening with her, and her daughter had fibromyalgia. And so she was reviewing and saying, you got to take this, you got to take that. She would take one look at the side effects and said, what I'm dealing with is not half as bad as all of this. And she would throw it all away.
Nowadays, it takes half the commercial for a new drug to explain the side effects. And some of the side effects are scary.
You might die is typically at the end.
Yeah, and blindness.
And can cause death or to commit suicide. So why do we want to do these? And we shouldn't be doing these things. But they're taking us away from the truth of the Father. So when people don't understand what's happening in the world, then they lean on man. And the doctors are telling them to do all these things. friends of mine are starting to go to doctor's appointments with their parents and looking, and some of the doctors have had their parents on the same medications for more than 30 years, and then multiple medications to handle the side effects. So they're like, why are they on this? And the level of it with the original problem, let's say it's 100 milligrams, never should have stayed at 100 milligrams. It should have been reduced to 25 if you even had them continue to take it. And they've been on the 100 milligrams for 30 years. And I'm just giving you some basic examples. And and that's what's been so amazing, that I've been working with all these widows across the country. I've learned all these things that I wouldn't have known about. And now it's at such a high proportion of people that are sick and people who are needing all this help, but it's all become a process of them getting the money. And I don't want to even get into certain diseases, but virus, the definition is a venom, a poison. So when they called what happened in 2019, 2020, 2021, they called it a virus. They create viruses in labs. It's the only way you can get a combo of a venom, a poison. And the definition in Latin is a venom, comma, a poison. That's what a virus is. So caution to let them do any of these things to us. But healthcare is just one of these. Education, religion, look at what they've done. They've ruined absolutely everything.
Yep.
People in religion structures are there's nobody who has testimonies. It's and I know people write in and say, well, I just heard a testimony from somebody. It was miraculous, but we're not speaking of the amazing Father we represent. We're not showing that he's with us every day in our life. We're not operating as though we have a Father in heaven who does have his hand upon us and is going to bring us through this. We aren't operating in the way we're supposed to be operating. So that's why when someone sets all these things up and they get everybody indoctrinated to keep going in and asking for these, that's what all these commercials say, go in and ask for these. Do you know it has been decided they can't do these TV commercials anymore. Have you seen them even slow down? They're not even slowing down.
No, I heard it announced, but they seem to, maybe they've included a few more disclaimers of side effects, but that's all. Other than that, they were constantly on.
Well, and then now the respiratory stuff they're doing to us in the air and what they're putting in the water and putting in the air, all these things they're doing to us cause respiratory issues, which is what the viruses have caused. And so you start multiplying the different ones that they're issuing because they're putting it out there. It's not created out in thin air. It's not happening to us because of fog or smog or these kinds of things. This is being done to us. And so when you're dealing with all of this and you're facing all of this, and every day it seems to be getting worse, it's because there's more things happening around about us. But again, why is it that people of other cultures, even in America, aren't affected like the people who have been constant in America?
Yep.
So it's just something to consider. And that's why between the religions, the education, that entire list, but that's their focus. That's their top 10. And we weren't aware to watch out for this and not fall for it. And that's, again, why to get tight with the Father is because he would advise you. I mean, when I was doing that medical legal corporation and I saw what they were doing in the hospitals, if I had not known that, when I had that targeting at Lynn Woods, I probably would have gone like the other 5 speakers to the hospital and I wouldn't be here. Because I said, I'm not even going there. And they said, what if you break a leg? I said, I'll go to a surgery center. Because people said, well, you still need a hospital after a car accident. I don't. I'll go to a surgery center. I'll let them do what they need to do and I'll get out of there. And staying overnight, everybody who can, stay with your family members during the midnight hour. So it's a different environment that we didn't even realize as to what's going on. But the next picture we've shown before, because we showed it, it's identical to the AFL-CIO. But this is the symbol since 1901. It represents Nazism. It represents fascism, socialism, communism. It's all the same. There's only 2 kingdoms that we can choose from. And that's why Elijah made it simple. He said, just choose this day who you will serve. And people were like, I don't know. I mean, these prophets are telling us all these things. And remember, I think it was 850 prophets. They were all liars. Every single one of them were liars. So we have to really watch out what we're doing with people and around people and being with people, because if you're depending upon man to bring you through this, may or may not make it through. That's just what goes on. And the next picture will show you a definite structure of how they do this to us. This is Stalin. And people remember him in the end after he was so destructive and took so many millions of lives in Russia. Stalin was admired by FDR for what he had done, thinking he did all this stuff for the people, made sure everybody got in line and got their portion of what's available. But these guys are all in the same structure together. That's what I cannot emphasize enough, is that this guy looked good. He was charming. He drew in all the people, and that's what they do. And then when they're in there, they have to do what they have to do. And it's no different with Stalin. It was no different with any of these people who came in and took over any of these countries. It was the same in Italy. It was the same in France. It was the same. It's the same all over. You get someone charismatic, put him in there. I mean, they probably think Zelensky's charismatic too, but he draws people, and he says he's there for the people and fighting for the people, and people believe him. But what has he done for the people?
Well, keep in mind, I believe it's Stalin that said, I don't care who votes. I care who counts the votes.
Yes. Yes.
Which is oh so timely these days. So.
And then the next point comes right back to the 10 points of creating a socialist state, is that it supports socialism for centralized control. That's why they've got all the youth in these socialist organizations. That's why even the military is joining these organizations. They gave out free cards to the Theosophical Society, to everybody who survived World War I. They have been pursuing this all the way along, and we just didn't even notice that it was going to impact us at all, because it all seems subtle. These layers are just layers, but when you compile them all together, that's why they have us where they have us today. So I want to make sure that you understand that it's going to creep right back in if we don't take care of all of it. And so please don't try and have it get done in 8 years or 10 years or whatever. The main stuff is being addressed. It's going to take decades to clean it all up. But we don't want to move too quickly in this phase, because we don't want anybody getting off and still having a stronghold to carry on to the next generations and bring this right back to our people.
Yep.
So point 32 is support socialism for centralized control, and it's support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture. Here's the examples: education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics. If you cooperate with us, you get the benefits. You don't cooperate with us, you don't get the benefits. And we don't even realize that's in the choices of whether or not you even get a benefit. I heard, did you see that it just changed that the whole Social Security program is now a government benefit?
Oh, I didn't see
for
it.
And they just changed the wording. We paid for it, and our ancestors paid for it, and our employers paid for it. The government didn't. It didn't cost them a dime.
That's right. It was originally, as I recall, it was presented as something of a savings program almost. This is your money. You'll see it back as you need it later in life. And yet it's clearly not what's happening. They just got through exposing that a number of people are collecting benefits who aren't citizens, have no right to it, shouldn't have ever been granted it, but they used it as a way to get people to come into the country, apparently.
It's in every program, and that's why it was so amazing what Elon Musk said to Joe Rogan. He said, what we did with this whole SNAP program? He said that Social Security is being paid to people that are over 200 years old. All it would take is a phone call to say, please verify your birth date. But most of them that are doing all of this have never been American citizens. They used our Social Security numbers for identity theft to come into the country to get a driver's license to then vote. And that they've come through the whole system that way. And that's why that whole system is so corrupted. All of it is so corrupted. They're talking about truck drivers now who have licenses and they don't even speak English.
Right.
But I noticed it just at Love's gas stations in my last trip across country. They only speak Russian. So they can't even speak to the Love's Gas people when something's wrong with their card. But they're given a card for this trip that has a certain amount of money on it. And when that runs out, they have to Love's Gas has this whole list of all these different people who are behind these cards who speak these different languages that they need to go and call. Those people don't know who to go and call. They just know cannot get gas. But they can't even say, I cannot get gas. They're up at the pump. They're doing the pump and they can't get the whole thing straightened out. And here's our employees in America having to try and work and figure out how to help these people who are driving 18-wheelers in our country. They don't speak English, understand English, and they don't understand the rules of the road. I've seen the craziest things with 18-wheelers doing the craziest things in communities because I drive off on the 2 lanes a lot to get around Atlanta, get around certain parts of the country, because I'd rather just do that in a relaxing drive than try and drive through the center of Atlanta or the center of Chicago. So in doing so, you see these guys doing crazy, crazy stuff because they're not just on one path. They've got to figure out about roundabouts. You ought to see an 18-wheeler on a roundabout. And it's got to be somebody who doesn't know how to drive on American roads. So we're in very, very interesting times. And it took a lot for them to get to this point, for us to recognize it, because they've done it in great numbers for a long time. But the general public is busy going to work, getting their kids to school, doing the school activities, making sure there's food on the table. I mean, just all these things that keep us busy that we didn't notice what was really happening under our watch. In fact, it was just today that there was an announcement. I put it back out on Twitter of the people like Ilhan Omar, who did exactly like Ilhan Omar, and they listed all the crimes she has committed. And they said more than 50% of the immigrants from her area of the world have done the exact same thing. And it's multiple laws they have broken. And so I put it back out there because my dad's whole family is Minnesotan, and they are in the UFTA golf tournaments and everything else. So I did the UFTA for these criminals right now. They're being found out. And then I said, and Minnesotans are going to get their state back. Yeah, you betcha. And so I know my cousins are going to love it because I was sending it out to them right before we came on today. It's just because Minnesota doesn't even look like Minnesota. I was just in Minneapolis for a big meeting toward the end of October. And when I was there are entire Somali communities. They don't integrate with anybody else. They don't want anything to do with anybody else. They only want their own people around them. They stay in their cultural dress and their cultural process. And I saw school buses dropping these people off. And the majority of these people that they told me were Somalis were wearing Muslim outfits. So how is a school bus dropping off adults in Muslim communities? And they're doing the stop signs on the side like they're letting them off from school, but they're not school age. So it's very interesting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I never would have guessed. I never, ever would have guessed. And I talked to several people there, and they said it's communities are everywhere. Just like when the Chaldeans came into San Diego, they went out to East County. They took over entire suburbs. And they have not gone back since Saddam was handled. They said they needed to get away from Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was handled long ago. They don't leave. And so there are so many things with bringing these cultures in and these belief systems and controlling entire communities. We had no idea. As a general public, we had no idea. And again, until COVID hit, and we had to sit 6 feet apart from people, stand 6 feet apart from people, and realize there weren't a lot of people who thought like we did. We didn't start seeing the divide in this country.
Wow. As we've gone through these last few months, do you sense that people are indeed, I guess, waking up to the situation that we're in? Are they at least gradually? Are we making progress, do you think?
I know we're making progress. The way I would describe it is a lot of people who were kind of on the fence and wanted a little more time to wait and see and wanted to know if we were really in these deep problems have now realized we're in these deep problems. And I think that is huge for our country, because the more of those that were on the fence and didn't make comments to people about how they believed or what they thought was happening in our country, yeah. I think now they're feeling it's time to start talking about it. It's time to start saying, you know, we got some really bad issues here that we're going to have to deal with, but it's we the people. Go back to our founding documents. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. It's us. Yep. And I just love how Teddy Roosevelt used to say, it's you and me, it's us. We're the government. It's not somebody else. It's not some other group. It's this whole thing is us. And so, and he's the one that created the Rough Riders. And I think we've mentioned this. I've mentioned this, I know, before, but I don't know if I mentioned it when we were together. Did you know that his cabins are in North Dakota? My cousins lived all around that area in North Dakota. And so when we went up through the Badlands on the west side of South Dakota and North Dakota, they had all of these places where they could stay, and they had all their horses there. And whenever our country needed something immediately, did you know that they put all their horses on train cars and went where they had to go to help people in our country? Wow. People forget all of these things, but that's like 1900 to 1915 time frame. Mm-hmm. Before and during the beginning of World War I. It's we're in a whole different mode now because they've changed exactly how we operate in this world. They've changed that pretty much all women are working, pretty much all moms are in the workplace. It takes mom and dad to pay the mortgage. And what they have done has made our entire culture under their ability to manipulate and control absolutely everything that we do, what we buy, how we buy, what we eat, how we eat. Do you get all processed foods? Do you get what are we doing with each other? They control all of it. They control what's available in the marketplace. They control who's able to be in the marketplace. They've controlled absolutely everything. So yes, what you asked about control, it's everything. In fact, you're going to find out more in the next point, 31, discourage American history. And I've told many times, I hated history and civics in school. I thought, why are we even doing this? It just didn't, none of it made any sense to me. It didn't relate to anything. It was details you were never going to use in your regular life. And it just didn't make any sense. And now I think it's because the majority of it were lies to build up people we should believe in and live that way. And that's not the plan at all. And so I think in us, we knew there was something horribly wrong. We're just now finding out how wrong and how deep this wrongness is in our world, because it's uncomfortable now. We can't say that we just want to remain comfortable. There is no comfortable left. We can't say we want to go back to being normal. There is no normal. They had already taken us so far out of what's true and what works that we cannot be the same after this whole thing. And people who are wanting to just be comfortable and have it be the same, it's not going to be fun. Because we have to start getting together. We have to start unifying. We have to start knowing who our neighbors are. We have to start knowing who we can operate with. We haven't done a lot of that because, again, they set us up to not know who our neighbors are. There's hardly any front porches. Any new houses that are built, do you see how it's just a flat front of a house? Yep. They used to always have front porches. People knew when neighbors came home. They knew about their children. They watched them grow up. They watched them play in the yard. Do you see any of that now?
Nope. And very frankly, I haven't seen it since my first home years ago. I had bought a townhome, and you could watch people drive in the afternoon from their jobs. Garage door would roll up, card roll in, garage door rolls down, you'd see nothing more. And it would be one after the other all the way down the street. It was just astounding. Nobody playing in the street, none of the kids out. It was very odd.
Not even just in townhomes, but it's in regular homes. And the next point takes us to next depth in discouraging American history. Belittle the forms of American culture. Discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. And think about, as you grew up, you heard a lot about Khrushchev. You heard a lot about Stalin. You heard a lot about Lenin. You heard a lot about how, they all wore big, heavy sweaters and they stood in lines for bread. I mean, those images are just constant because they were constantly talking about Russia. And remember the Cuban Missile Crisis at the time of Kennedy. That was going to be the nuclear scare people were building underground bunkers to go into then. And did you know that our leadership in America, several of them have bunkers to go to when something is going to happen to us?
Yep, we've heard that. Catherine Fitz had pointed out that bunkers had been built by certain folks. Then the latest is this incredible report that was delivered to Anna Paulina Luna's office by the Russian embassy that seems to suggest that there was actually talks in a good vein going on between Khrushchev and Kennedy, talking about building a bridge between Russia and America across the Aleutian Islands. It's not super commonly known, but the two islands that are ones in the U.S. and ones in Russia are only 2.5 miles apart. It'd be simple to get either a tunnel or a bridge potentially between them. All of a sudden, you connect the two countries. Imagine what that would do. And they called it the drawing in this report that had been turned over that was developed back when Kennedy was alive. They were getting ready to call it the Kennedy-Khrushchev World Peace Bridge.
It may still happen.
It may still, but imagine what the world would have been like had Kennedy not been killed. Was that our future, perhaps? That would be amazing and sorrowful to find out.
Well, everything would have changed. He took us out of Vietnam. We wouldn't have all the people coming in a decade later when they spent 10 years of having our men killed in Vietnam over a civil war, bringing a lot of their culture. I mean, in California, they had no idea how to deal with Asian gangs and nobody wanted to help them. They kept trying to figure out, they go, what do we do? We don't know any background on any of this. And nobody cared. It was like talking into the wind. It's just amazing what has been allowed and what has changed our culture and our structure. And that makes it easier when you, because it's all divide and conquer. Every bottom line for all of this is divide and conquer. Divide the family and conquer. We went through those things about, make divorce easy, make it, so it can happen at any time. And then go ahead and kill off a whole bunch of fathers in wars that we should have nothing to do with because it's civil war over there. We already lost over 700,000 because of the civil war here. And so we have a lot to do to rein this all in and get this on a different path.
Yep.
And that's the difference in where we are now and where we need to be. And that's why I keep saying, pray and see what your part is, because every one of us came with a purpose. I mean, and if I didn't know that I was going to be writing these books, I didn't even know when he sent me to Georgia, I was going to be staying in Georgia. And so people think, well, you knew everything that was, no, I didn't know any of it. And then he was going to have me without a roof over my head for 12 years. If I would have known, what would I have done? Because I don't know those things because I'm with him. And if you don't know where you're being led by the Holy Spirit. If you've got it all figured out. And I used to do that. I used to have my retirement all figured out. I had everything all planned out. And when he pulled the rug out like 5 times in a row, boom, 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 out of every industry I was involved in, out of everything I'd ever done. And I just said, okay, then now I want to come home. And he said, I said, there's nothing else you can do with me. I mean, they've just ruined me. They've changed my ID so many times. I'm done. I just want to come home. And he said, well, through me, you can do all things. And boom, next 3 years, I'm only home to do laundry and repack. He has me all over the world on his dime, and he handles everything in America. I don't even know how he handled it. Looking back over it, all of it got handled. All of it got handled. And you just stand in awe, because that's why it's so true in scripture. His ways are not our ways. So please don't try and limit him or restrict him to what you think is possible in your life, because there is nothing about my life that I would have ever imagined I would be doing, or where I would be, or how these things would be unfolding, or how I would know these things for these days, how I would have lived the exact things to connect the dots for all of this. That out, 30 years after all that debacle, that I would be getting a 45 points and go, oh, wow, I can write scriptures on this, God. I'll do a book and I'll write the scriptures. And he goes, it's not enough. What do you mean it's not enough? If you don't do a training manual, it won't last more than a couple of generations, and it'll swing right back. I'm like, whoa. So, because look what happened to the Pilgrims. They brought all this truth. The Civil War soldiers knew all of this truth, and it still swung back in, because all they wanted to do was kill the people who knew the truth.
Yep.
So when you kill all of them, what do you do? So on this next point of making it all about the communist agenda, and making like you don't even understand what the communist agenda is. They're just doing it already, and we're complying with it and coordinating with it without even realizing the path we're on. So, but it was CIA Director Casey in 1981. I think I mentioned this last time. He made this quote: "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." And he told everybody, everything you share with Americans has to be false until all they believe is a lie.
Wow.
So here's Father, truth and life, and other kingdom is death. And they don't want you to know anything about truth. They only want you to know about what's going to result in death. So that's why it was just really amazing how Father just told me, you got to tell my people, they want you dead. And then everybody keeps asking, who's they? There's only two kingdoms. So the people who have taken us down this path are in the other kingdom. The people who planned all this are in the other kingdom. The people who cooperated with this have joined the other kingdom. That's why it's really simple. You're making one choice or the other, life or death. And the breath of life only comes from the Father. And truth is who he is. And so we've already talked about that with the Hebrew short little video. But there's an interesting little CIA cover of a report that went into the intelligence agencies. And I just shared the cover of this. I don't have the document. CIA's use of journalists and clergy in intelligence operations.
And clergy.
In 1996. And that's,
wow. And clergy, isn't that interesting?
They had already taken the pastors and put them through the school of prophets and called them prophets. And then immediately by 99 is when they tried to get me, and I did not expose them until they went after Mark Taylor in February of 21. And isn't it interesting? It was in a Politico article, and everybody believed Politico back then, remember? And now we find out USAID created them out of nothing and paid these people to come out with these reports. So they attacked Mark Taylor as a false prophet. So when I supported him and said they not only made pastors prophets, they've now made them apostles. But what they did was they funded them to have mega churches, because the mega churches would draw in whole communities, because a mega church is 20,000 plus members. Imagine that many people attend your church. And so those mega church pastors who became prophets, they wanted me to go with them as a third person with C. Peter Wagner and John P. Kelly and commission apostles around the world. I said, humans don't commission apostles. And he said, but Sheila, you need the funds. I didn't even have $9. I just opened a checking account in 99. I hadn't had a checking account during that whole time before, because I just they kept seizing everything. And so I just didn't have the strength or the ability to do anything. And so he said, this is what we're going to do. You're going to do a newsletter. And then the newsletter is going to be charged at $150 a month, and share all of your testimonies and everything in that. And then we'll split it equally. So we'll each get $50 of that. So that is going to give you $50,000 a month. So that's going to kind of change your life. And then the dues were going to be $450 a month. And if the spouse wanted to be an apostle, they'd make them an apostle too, and they would both pay the dues per month. And I just said, so you want a club of apostles that you're charging dues to? All of this was just so strange. And this is, they're hitting me with this by having me rent a car and drive up to Northern California above Santa Rosa, which is above San Francisco. So I'm driving up Interstate 5 from San Diego all the way at the center of the state to get up there, and went through every last amount of money I had cash wise to get there. And then I hear this, and then he said, and it's going to be even better for you. And I said, what's that? He said, they're going to do 4 summits a year, and we're going to share the funds with you for that, because they all have to attend or they can't stay as an apostle. And then, and they're global. And so they're going to, arrange all of that. And so we're going to have your help with that. And then it's even better. They're going to tithe to us. I said, why would they tithe to us? And he said, well, where they're covering. I said, only the Father covers apostles. There is nobody who could imagine that Sheila Holm is going to Australia in 3 days, and when she gets there, everybody knows her because God introduced her. I can't do anything like that, because those are the trips I'd already been on. And I'm telling him all these examples. I said, there's no way we can cover people as apostles, and we can't commission them as apostles because they have to be called of the Lord. The fellowship should be Father's apostle and prophet with Christ as the chief cornerstone. That's Father's fellowship. And he said, but Sheila, the tithing, can you imagine what we're going to be sharing from that? Because they're going to tithe to us from their tithe from 20,000 plus members. And I said, it's filthy lucre. I didn't know the meaning of lucre, didn't know it was in scripture, didn't know any of this. I just said, that's filthy lucre. And I walked away. And when I went to pick him up to take him to the airport the next day and get my blessing, because he said, you don't have to worry about the rental car. You have to worry about any of your expenses. God has given me an amount, and it's going to way more than bless you for all of that. And he left for the airport early. I had nothing. The gas tank was empty. And God filled the tank before I got on the freeway and kept it open for the next full for the next 10 days, and got me back to San Diego, back up to Ojai by the Edwards Air Force Base, and where the shuttles all land, and up to Santa Barbara for meetings, and then into the meetings to go to Africa, and have me in that car until I go to Africa, because at the end of the 10 days, I was extended another night to speak at another church. And when I got there, I just came in and sat in the back, and this man and his wife came in and asked if they could sit there. I said, sure. And he said, well, Father said to sit here. And he said, you're in international ministry. I said, yes, sir. And he handed me an envelope, and it had $100 bills in it. And those $100 bills, I said, sir, after the service, God said, have him go with you. I took him to the rental agency so he could see that he was answering the blessing, that man left me without the blessing. And so to give him the testimony, because he listened to the Father, went to the bank, got all these $100 bills, got him in the envelope, and it paid for the car then. And I was going to give him the remainder of the money. And he said, no, God said it's until your next journey. I said, well, in 3 weeks, I'm supposed to be in Africa. And he said, well, you're going to need this car to get around. Unbelievable how God operates, and kept the gas tank full until all of that got handled.
Oh, that's an amazing story.
Everything he does with me is the same thing. Everything he does, because he knows the need, and he meets the need, and he knows who we are. And in the control, there's a picture I have with names on it. It's next.
Hang on, I'm getting it. There we go.
There we go. Okay. I'm going to explain a little bit about this picture, because we don't really understand how they work. This was a meeting, and it was in December, either 2000 or 2001 timeframe. They all gathered together in New York and all honored each other. So the 3 women sitting in front are the ones funding all of these projects with them. So Irene Diamond, they were in land or real estate development. Lenore Annenberg, her husband was very famous, and I think they operated in embassies as ambassadors. And then Brooke Astor is part of John Jacob Astor's lineage, the wealthiest man in the world who wanted to turn it all around because he didn't want a Federal Reserve. And he and all of his wealthy partners that he went to Europe to bring back, they were all killed on the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife stayed on the Titanic with him and went down with him. But this one was married, I think, to his son. And so she was funding, and they all had funded HIV clinics. So you see right by them is Anthony Fauci. And remember, Fauci and Birx did HIV clinics.
Yep.
What was HIV? A virus. The V stands for virus. Did you know Lyme disease has the same roots as HIV?
No.
Also a virus.
Mm.
Dr. Judy Mikovits, I've learned so much from her. We've spent so much time together because she's a Cherokee, and she's been on interviews, and she said, until I met Sheila Holm, I didn't know that I'm part of the Issachar tribe. Now, that was the 9th son of Jacob Israel. It's so adorable because she's sharing the information all over.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you knew this, but she shared all of her information with Robert Kennedy Jr. So Robert Kennedy Jr., before he was talking about any of this stuff, got all of his information because all of her research, she just handed all of it to him. Because she can't do this alone. And so they've known each other and worked together for many, many years. So now surrounding these people, so now you see Fauci on there. Okay, so now go back behind them. Judy Woodruff, news. Bill Moyers, wasn't he National Public Radio and news? Then you got Ted Turner. What did he do? He couldn't buy CBS for news, so he started his own news, CNN. The whole thing was set up to provide you with prepaid for news. And that was found out when they were over in Iraq, where they were making up their stories. And yet they're still in business to this very day. The fake news is still alive and well. Tom Brokaw grew up about 20 miles, 25 miles north of me in Yankton, South Dakota, from our farm in Nebraska. News. Judy Woodruff is from Augusta. News. You've got Bill Gates Sr., who was over the Planned Parenthood structure in Washington State. I think his main one is in Seattle. And George Soros was involved with funding a lot of this, but people don't understand a lot of that is not his money. It comes in through his puppet masters. Then who is Mamfella Ramfella, who's standing between George Soros and Barbara Walters, also news, Barbara Walters. She is from South Africa. She and her husband were very well-known activists in South Africa. And then she turned in her husband, who was being protected, but he couldn't cross the border. And she set up a meeting supposedly to help him with a journalist that was just across the border. It was all done on purpose. Where she sent him is where he was tortured and killed. And then she became one of the 4 directors for David Rockefeller and the other people of the World Banks globally. There's 4 World Bank directors, and they made her one of them. And I think that happened in 2001. And then Barbara Walters, you know, from news. And then you see David Rockefeller, but you don't see him. But he's the one right behind. And but it was too important to let you know that he was standing there, because who's standing next to him? The very tall man, Parsons. And here's a fun connection. He's Citigroup, Citibank. And how did he get in charge of that? His maternal grandfather was the landscape architect for all of the mansions of David Rockefeller.
Oh, gosh.
So that's their connection. Now, here's another fun fact. And I put this in my book series. I didn't put a lot of this in the new book because I didn't want to repeat a lot of things I'd already shared. But Parsons, remember when Les Moonves was overnight, he was scandaled and out on CBS?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When that happened, who did they put in that chair for the next 2 to 3 months? Parsons. So he went in there on their behalf to find out whatever he needed to find out. And then what happens? He's too sick to continue. And that's when they bring the person in that they want to replace Les Moonves.
Hmm.
So it's just interesting. And then this other guy, David, he's the one that rewrote history. And he won award after award after award. I don't know. I don't know if he even has a house big enough to hold all of his awards for rewriting history. That was his goal, and he's been awarded for it constantly. And I don't even know if he's still living now, but this is what they do. So they gather among themselves, award each other for all of their good works for their agenda. And we're sitting out here going, isn't Barbara Walters amazing? How does she find out all these things? I've watched him at the news station, ABC in San Diego. They're taking it off the teletype. That's the 4 a.m. memo. Everybody's reporting the same things. They're told everywhere around the world off of teletype what to report. And then they're changing it all day. So it looks like a different headline. But once I was there, I realized if you hear the 8 a.m. news, there isn't going to be much difference with the 11 p.m. news.
Well, there's a word for this, isn't there? And it's known as, there's a word for this. It's called the Mockingbird media.
Yes.
And it happens that I kind of had a feeling you might bring this up. So I have an example. Now, what you're going to see are little tiny screens from competing TV stations all across the country, different networks, different cities. But watch and listen carefully to what they say. That's really fascinating. It's going to take us a couple of minutes, but I think it will make it clear to people what has been going on.
Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So you get the picture.
That's what they do.
And they are good at it, aren't they? And what's interesting to me is that happens to be from several years ago. But we literally captured several examples from happening just this year. And it is the news stream, the mainstream, fake news that's trying to respin what Trump is accomplishing and make it look in any way they can, make it look negative, make it look like overreach, make it look like people are being harmed, when in fact, we're making progress with every one of these decisions. So it goes on even today.
Okay. Well, I think we've given people a lot to think about. And if you want, the next time we come together, we can start talking about point 30, discredit founding fathers. And all of you that have said, oh my gosh, Sheila thinks that these guys were great, but they're all 33rd degree Masons and they came in to take over our country. They came in to give us a republic for America, so we could live in liberty and freedom is what they gave us. So if you have the book, you can go through that aspect of looking at what this is all about, starting with point 30, and that starts on page 399. If you don't have the book, start thinking about all the things they've told you about the founding fathers. And it would be really exciting. I don't know if we can do a live interactive and answer it, but let us know your questions about what people have told you about the founding fathers, and we can address that next time. I feel so bad today. I have a hard stop because I have interviews up until 10 this evening, so I've got to stop now. But I'm so grateful we could get all of this to the people today. It's been awesome. Thank you, Bill.
You're very welcome, and we're pleased to have you, and thank you for making time. I'm going to, even if you have to go, I'm going to go ahead and show the other books that you have available and that they are available both through your website, hisbest.org, or through bookstores and places like Amazon. So thank you again for being here. God bless you, Sheila, and can't wait for the next segment.
Yes, and I want to let people know, because some of you wrote in and said you understood. I was being sabotaged on my new website. So when you went in to click to buy a book, let's say it was $15, you would see that it was going to cost you $35 for shipping and handling. All of that's a lie. That was done to not allow book orders to go through. It got cleaned up in the checkout, but who would go to the checkout if you have to pay $35 to have a $15 book shipped to you? It doesn't make sense. But that's just one of the problems. But there's so many levels of sabotage, and my new guys have everything straightened out to the point that when you order a book now, you're going to actually get an email when it ships, and you're going to know exactly the tracking number and everything. That's never been possible up to this time. And so there's many, many things in progress, but I thank you guys for being patient. And I'm sorry, I didn't know what was happening or why things were happening, but we're finding out, and I've got a really good team, and everything's getting cleaned up. So I just thank you, Bill, because I know from the time we've been working on this, I've been trying to clean up that website, and it's happening. So thank you so much, guys. I appreciate all the help and everything you can do. And if you can get the books through the website, I appreciate it very, very much. I thank you for everything you're doing to support the effort, and just blessings upon you and your family. Until we meet again.
Thanks very much, Sheila. Take care.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.